Morning, everyone. Welcome to today's regular meeting of the Council of the United Counties of Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry, today being Monday, May 15th. Madam Clerk, can you call to order the meeting, please?
It's moved by Councillor Bergeron, seconded by Councillor Broad, that the meeting of the Council of the United Counties of Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry be hereby called to order.
All those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. Madam Clerk, the adoption of the agenda as amended resolution, please.
It's moved by Councillor MacDonald, seconded by Councillor Bergeron, that Council approve the agenda as amended. And through you, Mr. Warden, it's just a simple amendment. If Council's okay with it, we're moving the KIR 2024 budget meeting dates up to the first item on the agenda.
All those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. Any disclosure of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof? Seeing none. In the adoption of the minutes.
It's moved by Councillor Broad, seconded by Councillor Densham, that the minutes of the meeting, including the in-camera minutes of the Council of the United Counties of Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry, held April 24th, 2023, be adopted as circulated.
All those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. And we're going to jump, as we just mentioned, right into our first KIR. Ms. Russell.
Good morning, Council. It's almost amazing to say that we're into the time of talking about the budget again for 2024. We were looking for Council's feedback on what you would like to see for the next budget, 2024 budget. Staff are looking at potentially doing an earlier budget for the sake of planning for capital projects, being able to anticipate next year's costs and bring that to you in early December. It does provide for early tendering, establishing those projects and getting advance approval of those projects. However, a later budget is also acceptable should Council desire a later budget, because we do know more of the year-end actuals for comparable purposes if Council would like to have that information ahead of time. But I just wanted to have a quick discussion of what Council would like to see.
Thank you, Ms. Russell. So, as requested, questions, comments about the proposal from members of Council. Councillor MacDonald, and then Councillor Lang.
Yeah, I'd prefer to see us completed in December. I think it gives staff a chance to put out tenders earlier, as opposed to waiting till end of February. Just the season, people want to get contractors want to get their pricing done. Get some in the bank as soon as possible, so we might get better pricing by doing it that way. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor MacDonald. Councillor Lang.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Through you, I agree.
Yes, Councillor Landry. Thank you, Councillor Lang.
If I can just add, is there a happy median between, I'm looking at Ben, I know it's not just Ben, but I think he's a big part of it, between finance and staff in regards to where you would like it, where they would like it, and where you would see yourselves more or less supplying both sides with advantages? Thanks.
Ben and I are very much on the same path with having an earlier budget in December as well. By the time January, February comes around, the Finance Department is very busy with year-end and audit and all those other things, and budget is also quite a time-consuming event. So having an earlier budget is definitely beneficial for the Finance Department as well, so we can, put all our time and effort into this document, which is really what we live by. It's our Bible all year long whenever we're looking at our financial documents. So early December is definitely, I'm in favor of that as well. We don't necessarily know what the province is going to do yet with the assessments. We might not know that anyways by the time the end of the year comes along. We haven't heard anything. So despite that, we are able to plan very well, and even if the assessments aren't completed yet. So I would definitely like an earlier budget as well.
Okay. Yes, Councillor McGillis. Oh, and congratulations on the success, and I'm glad to see you here today.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Warden. I thank everybody for their well wishes for my speedy recovery. It's coming well, thank you. I have to agree with Councillor McDonald as well. I think with the economic climate that we're in still yet, with supply chain issues, and even finding employees is not an easy issue too, easy concern. People are still having problems out there looking for, people are jumping all over the place too. So, and when we put out a budget early, we can put the numbers out and the jobs, and they can of course put the estimates in, and that way jobs can be done earlier and cheaper, hopefully, because everybody's after the same thing in the early parts of the season.
Thank you for your comments. Further questions, comments? So I'm going to look around the room, and I'm going to take a quick view of it, and I do believe that the earlier the better. Madam, Ms. Russell?
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to move into action requests. And there's no delegations today, so the action request, we're going to start, Madam Clerk, with the corporate services.
It's moved by Councillor Broad, seconded by Councillor Landry, that the Council of the United Counties of Stormont, Dundas and Glengarry approve the attached job description and salary classification job class for the position of Human Resources Manager, and that Council authorize the commencement of the recruitment for an individual to assume this position, and that the County Organizational Chart, Schedule A to Bylaw Number 5038, a bylaw to set remuneration for non-union staff, and any other relevant documents be amended to reflect the above changes.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Questions, comments? All those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none. Carried. Madam CEO, I'm sorry, did you have anything to offer to that?
Through you, Mr. Warden, I'd just like to say thank you for council's support on that. I think that it is a role that will add value to the counties overall, and I think also support your local municipalities. I have communicated with the CAOs and shared the job description with them, so I think we're all set to go. So following this, we will begin the recruitment process. So thank you.
Thank you, Madam. Transportation, Madam Clerk.
It's moved by Councillor Bergeron, seconded by Councillor McDonald, that the Council of the United Counties of Stormont, Dundas and Glengarry accept the tender from A.L. Blair Construction Limited for the installation of the new Cardinal Municipal Drain culverts and the installation of retaining walls at various existing culvert locations at their unit prices totaling $303,500 plus HST, and that the Director of Transportation Services be authorized to sign all necessary documents to give effect to the contract.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'd just like to note this is a straightforward installation tender. We've already pre-purchased the pipe and the retaining walls, and those are already in our possession or to be coordinated for delivery at the time. And so this would be two different pieces of work that we bundled together. We were trying to get the Cardinal MD culverts replaced last year. We didn't have the funds or the availability to do it in-house. So they've been sitting in St. Andrews over the winter. And that's just your typical large culvert replacement. And then the wing walls are part of end treatment programs that we've been doing over the last couple of years. The first year we took a wait and see approach and found that some of the embankments were still a little too steep and we were losing shoulder on the reconstructed culvert ends. And then the two that we did last year, we knew from the onset we were going to need to put retaining walls just to help hold back the steep embankments on the side of the road and to provide just a good clean culvert end on those municipal drains. So this is something that we're keen to do, just to have good culverts, and those assets will continue to serve for several decades in those states.
Thank you, Mr. Jans. Questions, comments from members of council? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. And Madam Clerk, the setback on County Road 2.
It's moved by Councillor McDonald, seconded by Councillor Bergeron, that the Council of the United Counties of Stormont, Dundas and Glengarry approve a setback of 20 meters from the center line of Civic Number 19126, County Road 2, Somerstown, to facilitate the construction of a garage and authorize the Director of Transportation Services to issue a setback permit to recognize the same.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Mr. DeHaan.
Thank you. So just very briefly for council, there were 3 lots that were created across from the former Caribou Cameron residence, which had served where priests had come to train, and it was a vacant kind of waterfront field prior to the development of these 3 lots. All 3 lots are developed now. The middle lot, which is 19126, it's more recently constructed, very modern looking house on the water. The owners are looking to install a garage that would be located essentially between the shared driveway between 19132 and their driveway. It is the setback they're requesting is similar to what council had previously granted several years ago at 19118. Actually, it's the exact same setback in this circumstance, just because what's permitted in the bylaw and not permitted in the bylaw, I don't have the authority to approve it, so it's up to council ultimately if they want to do that. I do have in my report note that that council may want to seek some formal comments from 19132 just to make sure they're satisfied with it. I did talk to the owner or the owner's agent of 19126. They said that the neighbor is aware of what's going on and there were no objections or concerns. So informally, we do have a sense that that neighbor is okay with the setback. But we don't have anything formally, so I'll really leave it up to council if that's something they want us to pursue. There's nothing in the bylaw that says we have to do that or that's contemplated in the approval by council. So I'll leave that with council if they're looking for it. From staff's perspective, we've approved it adjacent to it at 19118. It's kind of low and down off the roadway, so from a sight line or the safety perspective, there's no concerns from our end.
Thank you, Mr. DeHaan. Questions, comments from members of council? I do have one question. Whenever you, Mr. DeHaan, you mentioned 19118, and we approved that as a council, and it was presented to you as not being an issue, and it was manageable, and so was our approval. Okay, thank you. I think I saw Councilor McDonald. No? Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. Thank you, Mr. DeHaan. Madam Clerk, the action request from Planning, read Bill 97.
It's moved by Councillor Broad, seconded by Councillor Densham, that the Council of the United Counties of Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry receive the Bill 97 and draft provincial policy statement implications for SDG report and direct staff to submit comments to the province reflecting the report and any implications that updated natural heritage policies will have on SDG.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Good morning, Mr. Young. Go ahead, please.
Morning, Warden Fraser and Council. Thank you. In April, the province released the latest version of planning and housing reform, both Bill 97 and the new draft proposed provincial policy statement. In the report, we talk about Bill 97. Generally, that's aimed more at the rental housing market, but there are a few provisions for planning that are more either clarifications or things that have been already announced. So I had a summary of them there. The biggest change that would affect us locally is allowing up to 3 new vacant residential lots in prime agricultural areas. Severing off residential lots in prime farmlands has been prohibited explicitly since the 2005 provincial policy statement, and also there were a lot of restrictions before that. So if this does go through as proposed, it would definitely have a big impact on our agricultural areas. The various counties are kind of calculating what the numbers would be in terms of lots, and for most of them it's in the tens of thousands. That's the potential if you look at all the existing lots and if each one could get 3. Now if you're looking at the criteria, there are potentials like they have to comply with minimum distance separation, they're limited in size, they have to be compatible with surrounding agricultural operations, but just in our report we do kind of feel that it's fairly loose or could be better defined and more strictly defined for something that's a major policy change that would allow residential development throughout the counties in areas that have been protected for agriculture for the last many decades. I had a couple diagrams from a 1976 countryside planning document and some of the work that a couple of our county colleagues have put together, just showing kind of if you do one severance, what's the impact on all the surroundings. Suddenly you can't build barns in that area. You know, people are spreading manure, getting complaints, all things like that. So we foresee this creating a lot more conflicts than there already are between residential and agricultural uses. So that was one of our concerns. The next big change that happens to be something that we're working on right now is the growth population and settlement areas. They're proposed to make the criteria to expand the town boundaries a lot more flexible, so that right now you have to calculate all your vacant land, your population projection, and then how much land, let's say you're going to grow by 1,000 more people in your municipality, times how many acres per person, and that's all you can expand by. They're proposing to get rid of that and have a more flexible criteria. There's definitely some benefits for that, because sometimes council will go through the whole process and choose a parcel, and then that person has no intention of developing, so it'll kind of limit what's available for land. But if you ask that person, oh, could we remove your land and put it to someone else, then they're gonna say no, right, because it's part of the land value. So there would be some more flexibility, but we can also foresee some of the smaller communities getting larger applications for growth as well. Employment area is a bit more mixed use, so kind of separating an employment area is just your industrial, heavy industrial and warehouse. So it wouldn't be like a light industrial or a business commercial park. So the policies would allow even some residential in those areas. So that would eventually go to each municipality in terms of the zoning. Natural heritage, unfortunately, there's no policies released, and it's a big impact in our community. Every time we're doing a severance, we're looking at what are the significant wetlands, woodlands, and all those kind of criteria on the landscape. So that could be a big change. Unfortunately, we don't know what it is now. And just a note that the rural development wording is also changing a bit, and one of the outcomes from the growth study will be reviewing all the severance limits in rural as well. So that will be coming to council, and this policy would allow more discretion there. The next steps, if council would endorse this report, is we would draft a letter to the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing. First, we circulate to our township planners to see if they wanted to add anything or anything that's specific to their municipalities as well. And then we have to submit by early June. If the natural heritage policies come in before then, we would add something relevant to SDG, but there wouldn't be another council meeting before that. So that's my report. Thank you, Warden.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman. I really don't want to say thank you for that report. That's quite a report. But I'll open up questions, comments from members of council. I'm going to go with Councillor Bergeron, followed by Councillor Williams and Councillor Landry.
Okay, I have comments on all 3 points. Allowing 3 lots per farmland, that's going to create a lot of conflict. With minimum distance rules, it may apply at the time they build a house, but if a farmer wants to expand or build another barn, he could be, not allowed because there's a residence there. And when you have people moving out in the country, there will be complaints about noise, smell, dust. That's all. It's going to create a lot of conflict. As for expanding around the hamlets, that will be a good idea. For an example, in North Dundas, once we get our new well, that will only allow for 800 new households in the 2 villages. And Mr. Pohl has informed us that he has 1,810 requests, people waiting to build in North Dundas. And so for the time being, the only way to expand, and I don't even think we'd get to 1,810, would be to increase the settlement areas around, Inkerman, South Mountain. That's one way to get the houses up. About the employment area, only being industrial, that is a problem because, for instance, for us, industrial often uses a lot of water, which we don't have. And they describe it as employment. Well, you can employ in a commercial, a business which is not industrial will still employ people. but at the same time use a lot less water. And so those are my three things. No to the 3 lots, yes to expand hamlets because we need to, and the employment area should not just be limited to industrial.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Yeah, I quite agree with Councillor Bergeron. I'm just wondering, I think the comments should be rather strongly worded and I'm assuming you'll be able to get the support of the local municipalities on your comments, and I think we should really make a concerted effort to make this a thoroughly, supported comments to go back to the province. Is there any way, will we have any control at all over mitigating things like strip development? Is there anything that can be done locally that will mitigate some of the problems that are going to result out of this?
And that's an excellent question, because in that specific policy, there's some phrasing that the municipalities won't be able to do anything stricter for the ag severances than what's in the draft PPS. The only thing that municipalities could restrict would be for public health and safety. So in that case, perhaps entrances on county roads where it's very high speed, and water and septic, those type of things where it's a health and safety issue. But generally, development on local municipal roads, the way it's worded right now, the municipalities wouldn't be able to have any restrictions other than perhaps wider frontages in your zoning bylaws to say, okay, maybe it's 30 or 45 meters, maybe we want much wider lots to avoid the strip development. But generally, this document is trying to make sure that municipalities don't try and interfere with what they'd like to do.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Councillor Landry.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. So the statement that you made in regards, you're saying about the agricultural getting 3 new severances. So the previous number was 2. So anybody that already has their 2, I believe I read it, but they only get 1 extra one. So it's not 3 new ones, it's up to 3. So the farms that already have 2 severances, am I correct in thinking that they're only allowed 1 more to get to 3?
So the limit right now for the 2 severances is only applied to the rural area. So if it's prime agricultural, there's not a limit just because you're not really allowed to do severances. But at the same time, they're resetting the clock as part of this. So it wouldn't matter if you've severed off your surplus dwellings before or if you've done other things. It would be what is the lot that exists as of January 1st, 2023. And I would say we would also get pressure to reset the clocks for all the rural areas too. If the agricultural areas are allowed to get 1 severance or 3 lots per lot of record as of January 1st, if you go to a lot of municipalities like North Stormont would be, it's January 1st, 1980, I think is the date that's in the official plan. So I would say if it goes ahead and changes for ag, then there'll be a lot of pressure and requests to change that for rural as well. So it'd be pretty much for every rural and agricultural lot in the counties, potentially. But rural is up to the discretion of council. Ag would not be.
Okay. May I ask one more? So in regards to our village limits, and you're talking about more flexibility, so speaking on a landowner that's not planning on developing but does not want to lose his designation for value of being a development or a village limit property, the flexibility you're talking about, does it allow us to increase our village limits, or does it allow us to basically tell that gentleman that or that person that we are removing? So where's the power that they're giving us to build our hamlets?
So right now, in the 2020 PPS, the latest update, they gave the flexibility that you can do a net in and out. So you can say, this person, they're not developing, we'll move that land to somewhere else without going through a full comprehensive review. But the latest version is you don't have to do any comprehensive review at all. You just have to project how much you're going to grow over 25 years, but you can grow even further than that. So the municipalities could say, let's look 30 or 40 years ahead. So those parcels that are in the boundary, they'll be developed, but also more on the outside. So basically, you would not have to take out that parcel. You could just go ahead and add more on the outside of the communities.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Landry. Councillor Lang?
Thank you, Mr. Warden, through you. Thank you, Mr. Young, for the report. Very well written and explained a lot of things. I agree with everything that's been said so far. The farmland one is very, very concerning. It's almost crazy. We spent the last how many years arguing with the province over pieces of land that weren't prime farmland that we wanted to be able to develop, and they said, no, you have to keep them in prime farmland, and wouldn't let us, switch them, and now they're opening the whole thing up, and, some stuff that should be protected is going to be at risk, So I think I'm strongly in favor of you sending this out, and I think we should get all 6 municipalities on board and get something to them. I don't know how much good it'll do, but there are some good things. I do agree with the hamlets and this sort of thing, but the farmland one is the one that concerns me.
And through the warden, there are other Ontario counties as well that are also kind of having a similar response to the changes, and I think OFA probably would be the same direction.
Thank you, Councillor Lang. Councillor St. Pierre.
Thank you, through you, Warden. Peter, did you say in the employment areas that could lend to residential development as well?
That's correct. They would potentially, employment areas right now, it can be office, can be some institutional, industrial, manufacturing. They would say now the new definition is just industry, warehousing, manufacturing. And those other areas that are outside of that, that are more kind of business areas, should all be able to have mixed-use development. They do allow for a transition for health and safety, such as you could have maybe a light industrial between your heavy industrial. But they also have something that municipalities are required to permit mixed-use development and can't have official plan zoning bylaws that are more restrictive. So I think an example in South Dundas had a more sensitive land use, like a apartment kind of proposed on County Road 2, close to an industrial park. Now, under this policy, it might be more likely to go forward. Under the current policies, there's a lot more strength in terms of kind of protecting those employment areas.
Yeah, through you, yeah, that's a little bit concerning. I look at that as the same way with having residential right in the middle of ag. I just don't think residential and heavy industrial uses mix at all. I think we need to keep that separated. And to your point, I mean, South Dundas just went through that last year with an application. I think that's just, for me, as concerning with the ag community of mixing the two together. I just don't like it. I don't see it. I don't see a purpose in it. And I think that's just going to lead to more complaints down the road of noise and dust and heavy traffic and truck traffic and whatnot. So certainly I don't think that's a good mix.
Thank you, Councillor St. Pierre. Other questions, comments? Yes, Councillor McGillis.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. You were mentioning earlier, Peter, that the population of the municipality would dictate in terms of how much property that we could zone in terms of industrial or heavy industrial or employment property. Is that, you said they're dropping this in this new PPS policy statement?
Currently, through the warden, we're undertaking that study. So we actually have we're meeting with all our the township planners next week to go over the preliminary numbers. But now, instead of those numbers being a maximum, they would be the minimum for growth. So if it said that, let's say South Stormont needed 300 acres of more employment land, you wouldn't be limited to just that. You could plan beyond that. There are some criteria to make sure it is reasonable, but it is fairly flexible for those residential and employment expansions.
Please go ahead.
Thank you. The reason why I mentioned this is, you remember you were working with us when we were looking to change the property that's on where Avenue 31 is, for the 677 acres are, and we needed more designation for heavy industrial, and the designation wasn't fitting what we needed because of what we were allotted, and we asked South Dundas if they would help us out with that. Do you remember that? And we got that part of that designation from them so that we could expand that property. Could you talk about that a little bit? Is it still allowed, or?
Through the warden, so the projections are done at the regional level. So if there's certain amounts that are allocated at the regional level, and let's say the through county council, you want to move it to one large property, such as the Long Sault employment area. In the past, you would have had to potentially remove that from another municipality's allocation under these policies. I mean, on our current plan, we weren't planning to do that anyways. We're hopefully going to shift it all within municipalities and not try and borrow from other ones. But under this proposed policy, we wouldn't have to worry about that at all. It would just be what makes sense for each individual municipality. As long as it's reasonable, ultimately, county council can have the final say, but there wouldn't need to be a trade-off. We'll take some land from South Dundas and give it to South Stormont. That would not happen anymore.
Thank you, Councillor McGillis. I look around, we've had lots of discussion, but there's few that haven't voiced, but I have a feeling that we're all on a similar page. I do want to, I do have a couple questions myself, Mr. Young. Whenever on 4, as some of the, any new lot, and it's item 4, has existing access on a public road with appropriate frontage for ingress and egress. Does that limit if there's not access, or does existing access mean that there's potential for existing access?
It can be read in different ways. Some municipalities, or some would say, oh, we have a farm access, so that can count as residential. Like at the counties, we would classify those differently. But in this policy, you know, someone could say, let's put in a farm entrance and use that. So at the local level, generally you wouldn't have those type of restrictions on access, but I think the point is just more to avoid landlocked or properties or private road development rather than limiting to if there was a culvert at the time the PPS had passed. I think it's just going to be to make sure that it's has frontage on a public road and direct access, and our official plan would have that anyway, so I don't think it would change too much.
Thank you. And the other, one of the other things I'm going to bring up, it's about the natural heritage. Do we have any opportunity to say that, because I know it's not public health and safety, but we can't amend that or bylaw that in some fashion that natural heritage is considered? Or can we force that at our end that natural heritage is considered?
Generally, like a decision of the land use decision has to be consistent with the entire PPS. So if there was something in the natural heritage study or the policies that would prevent that severance, that could still be looked at, but it doesn't necessarily address things that aren't part of the natural heritage. So let's say a wetland that was not protected by the province, arguably, if it's only locally protected, then there's the PPS might override that provision. So there are certain ones that are identified by the province that always have to be taken into account, but it could mean that some local rules are superseded by this policy. So in, I believe in North Glengarry, some locally protected, locally significant wetlands or non-PSWs have zoning protections. That would have to, there's nothing in this policy that would prohibit that development there. And
I guess it's not a question, it's a comment. How recently did we just finish talking about the PPS?
So the PPS was 2020 was the latest one. And then 2021, 2022, and 2023, there have been new housing bills and new housing plans every year. So that's why it may feel like it's we're always getting a new piece of legislation because there have been, I
But
think
we
this
had,
is the third or
sorry
fourth
to interrupt you,
update.
but we had that big challenge where much time was spent by staff and lawyers and much discussion in this room about the changes that we had to argue against the agricultural land designation and rural land designation and the heavy hammer from the province, determining that what they had determined at the previous one was wrong and that we were wrong again, and now I think they're just, anyway, I don't want to be mean-spirited about it, but it's crazy, the province, what they're attempting here without a recognition of what goes on in rural Ontario. That's my comment.
Warden, it's definitely a challenge. We did that agricultural study, we did the natural heritage study, and now the population study, and all of those, they're in the hundreds of thousands, right? And now they're all having to go back to reverse that, and we've only completed them in the last really 3 years, so definitely a lot of money spent, and now some of those will have to be redone to meet those new policies, if this goes as proposed.
Thank you. Well, I'm glad the province feels there's no end to money. Councillor Landry.
Through you, Mr. Warden, I apologize for stepping in a second time. I'm just looking at one sketch. In regards to the minimum distance separation, you've created the different severances and then what it allocates. Is that going to put all the pressure on our committee of adjustment, people going now for minor variance and reducing these distances to try to make everything work? And did they not also change in regards to committee of adjustment where the public cannot comment or cannot file, they don't have the authorization to file? Am I correct on that as well?
That's definitely correct, and that's an excellent point that's been brought up, that if the farmers did want to oppose a severance or minor variance, they would have no ability to appeal, only for their own applications. But if it was to a severance and someone wanted to reduce the setback from a farmer's barn, that farmer would not be able to appeal the decision.
So if I may just, so are you, I chair the committee in North Stormont. Are you seeing where we're going to be now tasked to be the finger pointing person that is allowing these, or at least having to make the decision? Is that going to be a big mandate that's going to put pressure on us?
Definitely a lot more challenges and development applications than I think any of us would have thought before. So it'll be something totally new, I think, because mostly right now we're just dealing with existing lots and existing developments. This would be from areas that were never planned to have residential development.
Okay, I don't want to prolong this. We've gone around once, but I'm going to allow Carmer to go ahead. Councillor Williams to go ahead. Excuse me.
Yeah, thank you for that, Mr. Warden. Can we put together a resolution that embeds some of these comments, Mr. Warden, and formalize it in a motion, and then get it passed by County Council, and then pass it around to our member municipalities from Roma, because all the rural municipalities will support a motion like that. See if we can get the ball rolling and get other municipalities to really make this public.
Yes, Councillor Williams, I think that's important that we do something like that, and I look at our clerk and CAO and Mr. Young to help compile that resolution that we can sign off and circulate, or support and circulate. Thank you for that comment. Okay. One final.
Just a short question. Thank you, Mr. Warden. What's the timeline that we have for this, to get this, our comments out there?
The deadline is June 6th, so before the next council meeting. Although because they haven't released the natural heritage policies, they may extend the deadline, but currently the deadline's June 6th. Bill 97 will probably be, it's in second reading already, but for the PPS, it's beginning of June. So I could work on something during the meeting and send to Kimberly for later in the meeting.
That would be excellent. Thank you. Okay, so with that, thank you, Mr. Young. I'm sorry. Yes. Okay, and to the resolution, Madam Clerk, can you read it again one more time, please?
It was moved by Councillor Broad, seconded by Councillor Densham, that the Council of the United Counties of Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry receive the Bill 97 and draft provincial policy statement implications for SDG report and direct staff to submit comments to the province reflecting the report and any implications that updated natural heritage policies will have on SDG.
Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. Thank you, Madam Clerk. We're going to move right into tenders and quotations. Madam Clerk.
It's moved by Councillor MacDonald, seconded by Councillor Laundrie, that the Council of the United Counties of Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry accept the joint tender for the supply and delivery of clear diesel, colored diesel, and unleaded gasoline for a 36-month term from June 1st, 2023 to May 31st, 2026 from W.O. Stinson & Son Limited at the stipulated daily rack rate for Ottawa per litre with a delivery credit plus applicable taxes. The joint tender includes the United Counties of SDG, Township of South Glengarry, and Township of South Stormont.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Mr. Dahan, Mr. Jans.
Thank you. I'll take this one. Just very briefly, a reminder for council, the way we purchase fuel, which is a pretty common practice in industry, is to base it on the rack rate. So it's a published rate that's available at the terminals in Ottawa. So you establish that base price and everybody has to bid on that. And what becomes competitive in this tender is what kind of delivery cost we have on that rack rate. And as it has been for many, many years, it's actually not a delivery cost, but a delivery credit that we receive because we are buying in bulk. So we do get a little bit of delivery credit. It still costs us money because it's, you know, you're ultimately paying for the fuel, but they obviously, the suppliers get some kind of credit based on the amount they're buying from the terminal, and some of that savings gets passed on to us. So pretty straightforward. It's a 36-month term, and we've worked with Stinson in the past. We're very happy with the service we get from them, and I'm sure we're a good customer given how much fuel we buy.
Thank you, Mr. Dahan. Questions, comments from members of council? Councillor Lang.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Through you. Is it better price, or you didn't really say if we've improved a little or from the last one or not? Same?
Yeah, I to be honest with you, the credit we receive is like, and without disclosing too much, it's marginal. So if it's better, it's marginally better.
Anything further? All those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. And Madam Clerk, the rehabilitation of Hoople Creek Bridge.
It's moved by Councillor Broad, seconded by Councillor MacDonald, that the Council of the United Counties of Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry accept the tender from Dalcon Constructors Limited for the comprehensive rehabilitation of the Hoople Creek Bridge at their unit prices totaling $768,000 plus HST, and that the Director of Transportation Services be authorized to sign all documents to give effect to the contract.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Mr. Jans.
Thank you. So if you'll recall at the last meeting, we had the South Nation River Bridge and the Martintown Bridge projects before you, and the South Nation River Bridge was identified as a priority, and we took some money from Martintown Bridge to cover the South Nation River Bridge, which left about $1.6 million of money just sitting there, and we said we'd come back at this meeting with some options. So this would be the number one option here. We had this design tender ready. We issued for tender, and we feel that the price is very, very good. We had an engineering estimate for about $850,000 in 2022 dollars, and so we've come in under that. So we feel we've got some very, very good pricing. We had 4 bids. We had a lot of interest on this for how late it was in the year. So with this, we would be able to keep our staff, contract administration staff, for bridges well utilized this summer, and we'd be getting 2 bridges done as well as some other small stuff. So later on in this meeting, we'll have some minor stuff that we'd like to bring to your attention, but this would be the major item to make sure that we are getting work done this year and we're not missing a construction season.
Thank you. Questions, comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Move into bylaws. Good morning, Ms. Beeler.
The motion's moved by Councillor Bergeron, seconded by Councillor Densham, that bylaw number 5397, being a bylaw to adopt the Joint Health and Safety Guidelines and the Health and Safety Policy and Procedures Manual for 2023, be read and passed in open council, signed and sealed.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Ms. Beeler.
Good morning, Warden Fraser and fellow councillors. The United Counties of Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry recognizes the need for a health and safety program in all of its operations and is committed to creating a work environment that ensures the health and safety of its employees and the prevention of occupational injuries and disease. The Health and Safety Policy and Procedure Program is reviewed annually by the Joint Health and Safety Committee and brought to Council for discussion. In 2022, the modifications included corrections and formatting updates throughout the document, updates to Addendum 5, which is our accident, incident, and near-miss report form, not only to improve the form layout, but to add additional oversight and sign-off requirements for Director and Joint Health and Safety Committee co-chairs to complete the loop on corrective actions. In addition, we created a new decision matrix flowchart to help highlight reporting requirements and improve consistency and form completion across the organization. We also included updates to Addendum 11, which is our fire safety plan for the administration office as well as the jail facility. This was done to reflect use of the warden's house, to include an evacuation zone 7 for that portion of the building, to recognize our new fire panel that was put in, and to update deputy fire warden evacuation procedures and add a fire warden evacuation log. This addendum does go to the City of Cornwall Fire Services for review, and we received approval from them on April 25th, 2023. And finally, we had updates to Addendum 18, which is our training schedule, to include a complete list of online and in-class safety courses that are assigned during our onboarding process, and to include chipper, ATV, and ladder safety as equipment requiring training prior to use. Thank you, Warden.
Thank you, Catherine. Questions, comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Madam Clerk, the renewal of franchise agreement between the United Counties and Enbridge.
It's moved by Councillor Densham, seconded by Councillor Bergeron, that the Council of the United Counties of Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry approve the following prescribed resolution. Be it hereby resolved that 1, this Council approves the form of draft bylaw and franchise agreement attached hereto and authorizes the submission thereof to the Ontario Energy Board for approval pursuant to the provisions of Section 9 of the Municipal Franchises Act. 2, this Council requests that the Ontario Energy Board make an order declaring and directing that the assent of the municipal electors to the attached draft bylaw and franchise agreement pertaining to the Corporation of the United Counties of Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry is not necessary pursuant to the provisions of Section 9(4) of the Municipal Franchises Act, and that bylaw number 5398 be read a first and second time.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Thanks. So this is just the franchise agreement that, and this is we have franchise agreements with various utilities. Enbridge's needs renewal. This is the standard template that is being adopted across Ontario. In speaking with colleagues across Ontario, this is the agreement that we are to be passing. There's no opportunity really for any amendments or changes to it.
Thank you. Questions, comments? Councillor Broad.
Although it's not, thanks, Warden. Although it's not in regards to the agreement, I just wanted to note that several residents within South Dundas and probably within the counties have been very upset over the past year on the billing practices that Enbridge has involved in. And we've reached out to them many times for delegation information, including our MPP. And it's just concerning that residents continue to struggle with understanding their billing practices. And I just wanted that on record that South Dundas is concerned about that as it continues going ahead.
Thank you, Councillor Broad. Before I ask the question, for my benefit, maybe a benefit of others, and you've requested a delegation to attend your local council and to explain the practices or to outline it in a better fashion, and that's not been successful, that request?
Yes, we've had Councillor Ward several times have reached out to Enbridge to ask them to come for a delegation to explain those practices and to help our residents understand when they get credits, they don't pay their monthly bills for several months and then they get a significant bill, to understand how their reading practices go as they're averaging, and then when they do read the bill, price increases. It's just frustrating for residents to understand how they got to the position they're in. Whether they owe it or not, they're not really sure. Nobody disputes that they haven't used gas. It's whether the bill is right or not.
Thank you for clearing that up for me. Further questions, comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Madam Clerk, the update to the weed spraying policy.
It's moved by Councillor Broad, seconded by Councillor McDonald, that bylaw number 5399, being a bylaw to adopt policy 2-10, roadside weed spraying, be read and passed in open council, signed and sealed.
Mr. DeHaan.
Thank you. I've got Mr. Duncan, Phil Duncan here with us today. He was actually out with our contractor. They started roadside weed spraying this morning, so just a note to everybody, and I know Phil's done a great job of making sure your local road supervisors and public work directors are well informed as to the progress and the fact that this work is starting. And thanks as well to Todd and our communications team to get the word out to across all those papers and whatnot. So this document in front of council really reflects some of the discussions we had at our last meeting. For ease of use, I had put the amendments in red so that it's a little easier for council to see how it's changed compared to the original policy, and I hope it reflects the discussion we had, and look forward to council's I guess approval of or continued feedback on this one. And from our perspective, with its approval, it is essentially implemented immediately and doesn't change anything that how we're working right now in the field.
Thank you. Questions, comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And the lands acquired, Madam Clerk.
It's moved by Councillor Densham, seconded by Councillor Broad, that bylaw number 5400, being a bylaw to establish land as part of a highway, be read and passed in open council, signed and sealed.
Mr. DeHaan.
This is the most exciting road bylaw that we bring forward to council every year.
No need for questions then. No questions, comments? I'll offer the opportunity. Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Madam Clerk, before I ask for the consent agenda resolution, I offer the opportunity to directors, managers to offer anything else before we read the consent agenda. Seeing none, Madam Clerk, the consent agenda.
It's moved by Councillor Bergeron, seconded by Councillor Landry, that all items listed under the consent agenda section of the agenda be received for information purposes.
All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. Boards and committees. I guess I get to start off with the Warden's report, and I really don't have a whole lot to offer. I was attended with some of my other fellow county councilors, the Children's Treatment Center, kickoff luncheon, I think that would be appropriate to say, and leading into their bike-a-thon, which is amazing. They reportedly their number two major fundraiser, and at that luncheon there was quite an enlightening story about the benefits of the Children's Treatment Center and what it offers to members of our community that are unfortunately needing to use that as a resource. It was quite an eye-opener for me, being from North Dundas and not seeing the service in our area, so not being well informed of the service that takes place in Cornwall, and now there's a sub-branch or a satellite branch in North Glengarry. And that was something I attended, and there's an upcoming bike-a-thon. It's an easy bike-a-thon or a walk or a run on Saturday, May 27th. And if you have an opportunity to participate in that, I would appreciate your consideration of that. The other part that I'm going to talk about very briefly is the Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus. I had the opportunity seemingly to travel all the way across Ontario with our CAO, Maureen Adams, to get up to the Kawarthas to go to a caucus meeting. And I'll let Ms. Adams, if she would, speak of that and of the meeting she attended before that on behalf of the Eastern Ontario's Wardens Caucus as the CAOs met. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. And through you, we had a meeting last Thursday, and on that agenda, there were a few items. The wardens had an update from a consultant that provided an overview of some of the challenges that we're experiencing in paramedic services. And so we had a report that brought forward some of the major concerns, primarily the continued, I'm going to say, demographic in municipalities that are requiring an increase in calls, probably primarily due to many of our communities becoming a little bit more aged in population. There was discussion as well about the ambulances that get called out of areas and that cross-border issue with our ambulances sometimes getting called into the Ottawa area and then trying to get our services back. SDG is a little bit impacted by that, but not to the same extent as Prescott Russell or Leeds and Grenville. And the other fairly significant item is the offload delays. And so that is a much bigger problem from I think a health management provincially all across the border. Talked a little bit how there's, I think also too, there was discussion about the dispatch system does need to be changed and overhauled a little bit. I do believe that that is, in some of my conversations with other municipalities, I do believe that that is coming. And so that is certainly a value as well. We did have a request for a resolution at the Wardens Caucus that came through South Glengarry with respect to the rural education file. The Wardens Caucus was supportive of that, so that resolution will be forwarded back to South Glengarry and on to the province. And those were a couple of the major updates. Happy to take any questions or if there was anything further you wanted to mention.
I guess I had the opportunity to, thank you, Madam CEO. I had the opportunity whenever it goes around the table, and those that have sat, I guess, at the Wardens Caucus meetings have seen that opportunity to talk about regional issues. And as the CEO mentioned, the offload delays and some of the challenges others face. Maybe as a whole, SDG does not face the same struggles with offload delays, but at the western end of SDG, it is quite obvious the significance of offload delays with the close proximity to the hospitals in the city of Ottawa. And they also talked about some of the challenges, the other counties talked about the challenges they face with being sent out by the CCAC, I believe that's the right term. That's the dispatch service, and if they're available, they may be dispatched elsewhere. And so some of the practices used by others is they turn off the radios. So whenever they leave, whenever they've offloaded and they're getting out of the city of Ottawa, they would, or wherever they're captured, they would just not hear the call from dispatch. And my contention is that may work, but I don't think that's the appropriate way that should be handled. I think it should be more of an understanding of the needs that the crews that respond to our area need to not be delayed, and not so much delayed, but not held back so they can respond to calls because of shortages in those other centers where they're responding or delivering patients to. So it's one of my thoughts. But then one of my comments, and the other thought I had, bear with me, some of us in this room have heard me go on, and I want to look at Councillor McDonald for his support on generating some numbers that we may suffer through by subsidy. And I really caution myself, or couch how I say this. It's not so much about the ag community; it's about what the province fails to do for us. We support the ag community. The ag community pays 25% of their assessment. We all know that, and we're quite thankful that that takes place, that continues. We are all ag, that's our industry, as we've heard Mr. Young's talk today about the changes to PPS and our feelings about what's going to take place in the agriculture industry. So we know it's important and we are very supportive of it. But the province years ago, and it was supported by some other members of the caucus, what took place, the province would rebate the ag community, and Mr. Lang can speak to that, would rebate the ag community the 75% that they had paid if they paid the 100% to the lower tier. They would get the 75% back from the province. So in essence, the province supported that rebate, and now today, and not just today, but for quite a while, the lower tier has supported the rebate in essence by not receiving that 100% of the tax dollar. And so I talked about that, but I found it unfortunate that I was speaking about that up in the Kawarthas, where there wasn't a lot of ag land present. It was a lot of trees, lakes, rocks, and I'm not sure if it struck the note that I was hoping it to strike for support on that. I tend to forget that all of Eastern Ontario isn't as bountiful as our region, and some regions are less bountiful for agriculture. But anyway, I talked about that. I'll move on to the Joint Liaison Committee. I look at my fellow members. Is there anything to be brought up about that? There's nothing there. The Library Board, I look to Councillor Broad. Councillor McDonald.
Thank you. I have so far gotten away from this one, so it's my turn. We met in Alexandria, which is the busiest library in the system, which is quite nice to know. We were met there by Lauren and Iris, two people who work there, as well as one of the managers. One of them is a manager. An item that was brought up that administration would like to bring forward, it's drag story time. So that is an administrative thing, but they wanted to let us know politically because at other places this does create some pushback. So it is what it is there. Q1, obviously number person here, 23.6% up, so our libraries are being used more than Q1 of the previous year. There was a Love Your Library event, quite successful. We also had some local producers, just Glengarry Maple and Shannon Court were two that I wrote down, so I'd like just to thank them for supporting our library and directly with the goodie bag prizes. There were others, but those were some from Glengarry County. Glengarry Reads, there's an item to come up later, so I won't take away from that. And we're in the throes of replacing Karen Franklin, so I don't know if there's more to that after, but I'd like to thank Maureen, Kim, and Mike for your time on the selection committee. That's it.
Thank you, Councillor McDonald. Police Services Board, Councillor McGillis, anything to report? Thank you. Eastern Ontario Health Unit, Councillor Williams, Councillor Lang, nothing to report. Glens Store-Dunn Lodge, Councillor Broad.
Yep, so thank you, Warden. Our March meeting was canceled due to illness, and we've not been able to reschedule, so we are meeting in June. Just two things we want to note from the board. We're just continuing with follow-ups with ministry inspections. They were back in April. We will be getting our compliance report for the next meeting. Secondly, COVID screening at Glen Store-Dunn Lodge is now complete, and the requirement is self-assessment. So there would not be permanent staff screening at the front entrance of the lodge.
Thank you for that update. Councillor Lake, did you have anything to add to that? Thank you. Raise and South Nation Source Water Protection, Councillor Bergeron, anything to report? Thank you. Municipal Advisory Committee, I have nothing to report. Eastern Ontario Agri-Food Network, Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. The good news is that Prescott Russell is officially on board as a municipal funder now of that organization. They didn't get approval until just recently. There is going to be some discussion about the equity of the funding that has been provided, because SDG and Cornwall both have funded the organization to the tune of $25,000, whereas Prescott Russell has approved $40,000, and so I think that's probably going to be up for discussion in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm just going to look at Mr. Laiho. Whenever I mention this next one about the Eastern Ontario Agri-Food Network, I just want to look for a head nod that Louis Ballon will be speaking at the Warden's Breakfast, and he's the chair of the Eastern Ontario Agri-Food Network. Executive Director, thank you, Councillor Williams. So just to bring that up, there's an opportunity to hear more about that organization. The Regional Incentives Programs Approvals, Councillor Densham.
Nothing to report. We have a meeting tomorrow, about a dozen candidates to be considered, so we're looking forward to that meeting tomorrow.
Sounds exciting, thank you. Key information reports, we'll go right into, we've already had Ms. Russell's report, so Mr. Young. I'm sorry, 1 minute, please. Yes, Councillor Williams.
I'm sorry to bring you backwards in the agenda, but I just realized that in our consent agenda, there was a request from the Social Development Council to appoint a board member. And I think rather than just ignoring the request, we should probably, at the very least, discuss it.
Thank you. We'll do that. If no one minds, we'll do that right after Mr. Young. Thank you for bringing that to my attention.
I'll have Karina give a short summary of the grant awards.
Perfect. So good morning, Warden Fraser and members of council. We're happy to be here this morning to go over the 2023 Regional Tourism Grant Awards. The Regional Tourism Grant Program is a really important initiative for local community groups and non-for-profits. It helps them grow and develop their tourism initiatives. So for 2023, the program was funded with $40,000, and the intake period was from March 1st to March 24th. This year, we were able to revamp the application process and introduced an online application. So this really streamlined the process for the applicants as well as for us reviewing the applications. So in total, there were 25 applications received and a total ask of almost $105,000. So April 20th, we met Warden Fraser, myself, and Peter to review the applications, and we awarded 11 organizations with tourism grants. So you can see them behind me. A few notable ones, there was I won't go through them all, but the Williamstown Fair. So they're working on incorporating some Indigenous features to the fair. They're working with Akwesasne Travel, and they're going to have some hands-on experiences, including weaving, lacrosse, stick making, and music at the fair this year. Art on the Waterfront, similar, will be introducing a larger Indigenous component, and they've budgeted money for educational workshops, for dancing and drumming as well. Some of the other applications that we've approved, there was the Raisin Region Conservation Authority, so they will be partnering with the Catholic District School Board of Eastern Ontario to build a new cabin on their site. So they've done one previously and will be introducing a new one. They'll be building it this year and it will be available next year. There was the Downtown Winchester Committee, which was approved for Winchester Bike Nights. So that's an event that happens the second Thursday, June through September. They close down the main street, have vendors on site, and it's a huge event. We've talked about it quite a bit at the trade shows we've done this year, and there's a lot of interest in the public for that. Friends of the Summerstown Trails were approved for a new ATV to maintain the trails. So right now, the equipment that they have wasn't suitable to turn around the trails once the snow fell for fat biking, so it would be a couple days lead time before people could get out. So with the new ATV, they'll be able to do it right away, and the trails will be open and accessible faster than they have in the past. And the last one I'll mention is the Glengarry Mental Health Initiative. So they're going to be doing a night market. The event will be happening at Monroe Mills. It will feature vendors from across SDG. There'll be music on site and the opportunity to talk about mental health in the region. You can see the other ones that are listed, and if you have any questions, I'm not sure if you want to add anything, Peter.
I know. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Belanger. Questions, comments from members of council? My comment to that was it was a very productive meeting, not lengthy, and some good information was passed along, and hard consideration was given to those that received support from the tourism grant group and all of us in essence. So thank you for that, and I enjoyed the meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. DeHaan, the Oak Valley Bridge. Okay. No, but thank you. I'm going to make a clarification. To Councillor Williams' thoughts, we're going to bump that right into miscellaneous business. Councillor Williams, your request, the social development issue. We'll carry that forward in this miscellaneous. So, Mr. DeHaan.
Pardon, Warren, I believe you said Oak Valley Bridge, but before that we have the 2023 Bridge Update Report. So I'm going to start with that one.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, please do.
So on the first page of this report here, I have a table 1, which was the current 2023 bridge financials. That would be applicable prior to this morning, as we've made the change with Hoople. So as you can see at the bottom, we had a total sort of portfolio budget of 5.56 million, and we had committed to date 3 million. And so that's where we stood as of this morning. Few things I'd like to note in this portfolio. The pre-purchase of the Inkerman girders was very good for us, and we have approximately $250,000 going to the reserve for the replacement of the superstructure on that bridge. And also that we are currently holding on issuing a tender for Eastman Creek culvert lining. Our county staff had gone out and identified cross culverts that were in rough shape ahead of the 4-year resurfacing plan, and found quantities that were slightly higher than expected. As part of making sure we have money to address the worst culverts first, we're just holding on the issuance of that tender. And if it is something that we do come back later in the year with sufficient funds for, assuming the tender for the smaller cross culverts is favorable pricing, this is something, the Eastman Creek culvert lining is something that we could do later in the summer or early fall. It's an appropriate time of year for something along those lines. So that's where we're sitting at the moment. Looking forward to a couple of the other items that we wanted to bring to your attention at this meeting. Some proposed projects to just round out our staff's utilization this summer. So we've covered the Hoople Creek Bridge, which was approved this morning. We are also looking ahead at some of the large culverts that would be should be done in advance of future years resurfacing. With the efficiency plan that we put together for resurfacing, some of the road sections were moved around. We identified that there's one concrete box culvert we'd like to replace this year if we can, so that we're not affecting the 4-year plan, and we are not affecting the quality of the asphalt later, trying to replace this structure. So on County Road 15, we have this one box. It's a smaller box. It's a relatively standard size. We're anticipating that it would be relatively inexpensive to replace, just about $300,000. So I'm hoping to get a bit of a nod of approval from council this morning on whether we can pursue that. We would have to issue a tender for the pre-purchase. It would come back to you guys for approval then, and we would have to tender the replacement as well. I don't know if I'll break it.
Okay, we can stop there, Mr. Jans, and look for thoughts on that, on the Upper Moose Creek culvert replacement. Do I have a quick look around the room and some nods? There you go.
Okay, so we'll come back to you guys with with tenders for those items at future meetings. There are also two minor items that we would like to perform this summer, some minor bridge maintenance activities. Some of the bridges that were put in the 80s are holding out very well. We haven't been getting around to those for their first rehabilitations. As a result, there's a lot of brush growing around them. We haven't mobilized contractors to clear the brush out to open up the workspace, and some of the wood, the vines are getting very thick. I've got a nice picture of vines growing up the abutment wall and starting to grow out across the soffit of the bridge. It's a very neat sight, but unfortunately we don't want that there pushing into the cracks or opening up new ones. So we'd like to have our crews go out and remove that vegetation, just clear everything down to the ground and start over again. And we were anticipating that would cost approximately $5,000 to target some of the worst bridges this year, and it's something that we could consider in future years. Moving from bridge to bridge and just making sure that it's open around them, the wind can dry the concrete, etc., and that the vegetation isn't a problem. The other item that we would like to start is the practice of sealing our concrete. There are products that we can apply to the concrete in spray form or roll-on, and they're very good at preventing the salt from penetrating the concrete. It's best applied on new concrete after about 1 month of curing, and it does need to be reapplied every couple of years. However, we have been putting stainless steel bar in a lot of our exposed concrete. There are still some elements on some bridges that don't have this or are susceptible to the brine soaking in and causing corrosion on the bar. It also deteriorates the concrete itself to a degree. So our crews would be able to go and for about approximately $25,000 per year on a rotation basis, spray bridges with this product, and then come back again in about 4 or 5 years and reapply, and we should see a significant reduction in the damages caused by salt on these structures. So it's something that we would like to do this year. We still have plenty of availability with our staff to give this a try and see what kind of results we start to get from that. Moving on to the last page of the report, we have Table 2. So this would be a sort of update to Table 1 with the commitments, the global budget, the commitments made to date, and the proposed commitments that I was just speaking about. Now, Hubble Creek Bridge, the pricing was a lot lower than we were necessarily bracing for, so we do have an additional $250,000 that's not encompassed in this report. And so at the bottom of the proposed commitments, it drops to about 1.8 million, and the surplus deficit would be approximately 730,000. There's one item that I didn't include in this report that I was considering bringing to your attention. We've identified that for about $100,000 we could do a timely investment on Bailey's Bridge on County Road 16, just south of the T intersection with County Road 3. The asphalt is in poor condition, the waterproof and sorry, did I say Bailey's Bridge? Yeah. Sorry, Baldwin's Bridge. The waterproof and pave right now is the last line of defense for the concrete. And so if we could go in there and scrape everything off, make sure the concrete's in good condition, new waterproofing, new paving, seal the concrete, and I believe the new rubber seals on the expansion joints for about $100,000. We could go in there. This bridge was built in 1995. It has not had a first rehabilitation, so the asphalt is at end of life, and if we can put that $100,000 in there, we could buy several more decades, likely before we'd ever have to look at that bridge for a major rehab. So if I could get maybe another nod from you guys, and then we could issue a tender for that and come back to you guys with that price at a future meeting. It's something I'd be interested in hearing about right now.
Thank you, Mr. Jan. So, again, as requested, consideration about the Baldwin Bridge rehab. This we're referring to. As I go around the room, do I see any shakes of no? It's yes. We look forward to that information. Thank you.
Thank you. And I will move on to the next report, which is the Oak Valley Bridge. So this is a bridge on County Road 5 over one of the branches of the South Nation River. And it was built in 1984, I believe. It is a concrete eye-girder bridge on abutments with conventional expansion joints, and those joints are leaking. The bridge does not have safety barriers that meet the current crash test guidelines. All in all, it's just up for its first renewal. Looking at the traffic on this road, it is a very low traffic road. Our latest count pegs it at approximately 400 vehicles per day, which is a very, very low quantity. And then it's worth noting that our patrol garage is a few kilometers to the east. And so a significant portion of that traffic might be county traffic to begin with. So what I'm looking for from council is a quick go around and a head nod. One of the things that we incorporate into our RFPs at the onset of the project before we've even hired a consultant is to advise prospective consultants that it is to be done under staged construction. The road cannot be closed. But due to the low impact that this would have and the potential for savings, I think it's worth considering a full closure on this bridge to save the county money. And as part of this, we'd be willing to do an outreach and discuss the potential impacts with the local residents, the local farmers up and down that road. There's a good handful of houses on either side of the bridge, and we'd like to discuss with them the proposed project, but ultimately we're looking for a recommendation to, from the onset, move forward as though this would be a full closure for this bridge.
If I could. Sorry, I'm just going to jump in on this one too. I would say, whenever we do have a full closure, or even, so in a full closure, certainly we do get calls about the inconvenience or the impact to people that are trying to traverse the bridge or that are traversing the bridge. And I think it's well worth noting in this circumstance too, because it is in the middle of an agricultural area, even if in a staged type of construction, most agricultural equipment can't cross that bridge anyway because they're overly wide when compared to the lane that we leave for passage in a staged construction. So, I guess what we're trying to say is, from our perspective, the most impacted by the work on that bridge, whether it's closed or whether it's staged, I don't think is going to make a difference for that agricultural community. And again, this is easy for me to say in my personal opinion, but that's, I guess, experience has shown that tends to be, even though we do stage construction, the agricultural community, they can't cross it anyway because it's too narrow for them to cross it with the large equipment that they've got. So I guess we're really just looking for council to see if right from the outset, if it makes sense, we feel it makes sense for us to close that bridge. We want to see if council is, of that same mind, or if there's more, or if we kind of do it the conventional way we do bring forward these requests for proposals.
Thank you, Mr. Jans, Mr. DeHaan. So to that question, again, as I quickly go around the room, we've somewhat established that we see the advantage of a full closure, and as I think about the bypass, 43 bypass around Chesterville, which impacts much more than 400 trips a day, and we've taken that challenge on as the council and staff. So anyway, head nod about the closure of the Oak Valley Bridge, or any discussion against. Councillor McGillis.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. When you do something like that for closure to a bridge, do you look at the impact that it might have with the 911 response?
Certainly, we do tend to circulate. Well, not we do tend. Whenever we do have a closure like that, advance notice and notice is given to emergency responders. We post it in Municipal 511, which is also used by mapping, like Google Maps and Waze and whatnot, and shows that road is closed. So it does get put out into the internet, and we also provide the appropriate notice to emergency services.
Thank you. Further questions, comments, thoughts? Councillor Lang.
Thank you, Mr. Warden, through you. I think I'm in favor of it. I think it pays for us to save the money to do full closures, and I think you're right that the farm community can't cross a single lane with most equipment anyway. But if it can be done, and it's not always doable, but if we avoid the months of May, October, and November, the farm community can be reasonably happy that,
Thank you, Councillor Lang. Councillor Broad.
Yeah, I echo everyone's statements. Thank you, Warden. Also, I really appreciate the safety aspect we build into it so that the workers are there without other traffic. So I appreciate the cost savings, but most importantly, I think it is better safety avenues for us to do those independently. Thank you.
Thank you for your there seems to be agreement that we pursue that thought of the full closure.
Okay.
And if we could, shall we move on to the sun glare?
Yes. So we completed the sun glare study with Parsons at the intersection of County Road 43 and County Road 7. They reviewed the dates of incidences and the sun angle at the time of those incidents, and they've concluded approximately 60% of the collisions over the past 6 years, the sun glare in the southbound driver's eye would have been a factor or could have been a factor depending on how they sat in their vehicle with the windshield or the roof of the vehicle projecting over their face. And so the report that they provided was attached, I believe it was attached to this key information report. So we have concluded that unfortunately there's not much we can do about this sun glare in terms of removing it as a factor at the intersection. However, county staff are going to continue to look for technologies that could identify hazards and bring that to the attention of drivers without necessarily having to either use their eyes in the direction of the sun, or if they do have that glare but they've got something in their peripheral that identifies that it's unsafe to go, we'll continue to monitor for technologies that might be able to get around the factor that they've just had the sun in their eyes for the last couple hundred meters approaching that intersection.
Thank you for that. Questions, comments? Councillor Bergeron.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Warden. Being the keen counselor I am, I read the full report, and I know that they took this sun glare from scientific statistics, because they weren't there at those days and those times of day. So actually yesterday, I drove to Chesterville to do that crossing, and around the same time, because these are happening 12:51, 11:49, 12:44, in this time frame, at this time of year. And so what I observed is, as I came around Vanden Bosch, the first thing you see is that red flashing light at quite the distance. And then you see stop ahead, the sign. And then you see the sign that says cross traffic does not stop. And then you hit all those rumble bars. And then the stop sign is double the size right at the road. So it's quite obvious that there's a stop there and it's not crossing. But when I looked at the actual description of each accident, out of the 6, one person said he thought it was a 4-way stop, which was the cause of the accident. The other person went right through the stop, never even stopped, didn't even notice there was a stop there. The third one, the accident came from the east. So I actually stopped at the intersection because it said, and the sun, by the way, was over my roof. It was not at all in front of my windshield, to the point where they said, well, you could be sitting forward and maybe the sun. It wasn't that bad. But I did not require to move forward because just sitting back on my seat, Highway 43 on both sides is very clear right to the other side of the road. And so for the person that got hit from the east, sun glare, even if it was there, was not a factor because you're looking over there and you can see the vehicles coming. And so for this report to say 60% maybe was due to sun glare, I don't agree with that. I think that a lot of these accidents is just distracted driving. And I know that there is, I think, I was told by actually the mayor on the way here, there is technology now where if we wanted to do something, if there was an oncoming, there's a radar piece of equipment that could flash a light. That may make a difference. It might, but I don't think that it was sun glare. My personal opinion.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Densham.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. And I know I've shared with Director DeHaan the potential technology that you were speaking of, because I sought out a specific vendor at OGRA to look at the radar potential and the fact that you could have a sign flashing at that point in time. And he equated the cost to about the same cost potentially as a radar sign, which is not overly expensive, about $2,500, give or take, depending on the technology. I think, again, whether it be distracted driving or just routine driving, somebody used to that intersection, not seeing traffic all the time and just going through it, I think what you need is something that's going to, and I'm not an expert by any means, but something that will catch your eye in the cases where there is traffic. And so I'm hopeful that if you continue to explore that technology, that hopefully that will, again, give the driver who's used to that intersection being fairly quiet at times, that will catch their eye. Again, we spent a lot of money with engineering reports, et cetera, et cetera. If we can spend some money in actually trying some solutions, and hopefully, especially, I see this as potentially a very low-cost option, but if we can spend some money now on trying something that will actually make a difference, I would support that.
Thank you, Councillor Densham. Councillor Landry.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Warden. As I was reading this report, and that's why I'm speaking on it, you look at the times, everything roughly, there's 5 of them, I believe, is at lunchtime. If you look at any time at lunchtime, the sun is way up in the air. There's no, like, to me, that was senseless to do a sun report. I can see possibly in the month of February when you're getting at 4:47. But as I was on the fire department for many years, and I've got to motor vehicle accidents which took place either at sunrise or sunset, and you can see, and driving home, the sun is right in front of you, impacts but at lunchtime, I mean, it's so high, it might be where you want your sunglasses, but it would not be an effect of giving you obstruction. So I just reading the report, I don't know if it gave us a lot of good value to determine, but as mentioned by Councillor Densham, I looked at it at OGRA. I believe the 2,500 is now stepped it up a bit. I started off thinking that's what I was told, but now from reviewing it's a bit more, but that would be something I think that would be more beneficial. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Landry. Yes, Mr. DeHaan.
Just back to Councillor Dencham's discussion he had and the technology he saw, and certainly we are looking into it. One of the things I just maybe to bring to Council's attention is that sometimes those types of signs require Council's, I'm going to say, approval, not necessarily, like if it's a small dollar value, that's one thing. You know, we've got delegated authority as staff to do all sorts of things that we don't have to bother Council with, but bringing something like that or putting something like that online, online being like actually in service, I think from a liability perspective, because it doesn't, you know, now all of a sudden this intersection doesn't conform to the appropriate standards, we probably will have to come back to Council to get your blessing to go ahead and do it, because as a corporation, we are potentially accepting some type of liability by doing something that's not in a published standard or an accepted type of sign. So I just want to bring that to Council's attention from staff's perspective. Like, I'm very comfortable doing that kind of thing, like trying to be innovative and you know, pushing the edge of technology and using what's out there before the guidelines and whatnot catch up to what's available on the market. But it is, you know, there is a certain point where we do need to have Council make sure they're satisfied with that or willing to accept as a corporation that liability that comes with going outside the box. So I just want to bring that to Council's attention.
Thank you, Mr. DeHaan. Councillor Gaindel.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Through you, question for Ben. Has there been any reported accidents since we added the additional signage this year?
I can tell you that I do have 2022 and the first 4 months of 2023 collision statistics, but I haven't been able to put it up on the GIS and really digest it yet, so I don't have that answer, but it is something that I could come back with, or perhaps by email shortly, get you guys a response on that.
Yes, go ahead, please.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. Just before we spend any more money, if the additional steps we've taken have seemed to alleviate any sort of issue, might be something to consider.
Just anecdotally, Councillor Gaindo, I do believe I had heard of one, and it was like a forehead slap, you know, like, oh, we're in the midst of this, with the new measures have been in place. So there's some recollection of that, but Mr. Jans will confirm that if there was one, since that cross traffic does not stop sign was up. Anything else to this? So my thought on some of the discussion that went around, this was something I was looking forward to, this study, and it wasn't so much a study to confirm. It was a study to be able to say we spent the, I think, $5,000 thereabouts to have an answer one way or another and have a discussion about it based on a study as opposed to a supposition. So I think it was necessary that we went through this process. Otherwise, the question may linger for some that we didn't endeavor to come to some type of conclusion about the sun glare as being an issue. And I do understand all the information collected, and as Councillor Bergeron talked about, we've had discussions about this over the past. It is a topic, a hot topic in North Dundas, and rightly so. So I appreciate everyone's discussion to it, and I look forward to some more information coming back about that signage, and to Councillor Gaindo's question about frequency of or number of accidents since the last installation of a safety measure. So thank you. County Road 22.
All right, thank you. Yes, so County Road 22 reconstruction project is underway in terms of design, and we have some other activities ongoing that are spinning off of this. So at the beginning of this report, I do provide the original schedule that we had conceived at the time of putting this RFP out there, and as you can see, we intended to have design ready for tender drawings in January of this year, and we aren't there yet. Some of the aspects that have come into play here is we are affecting municipal drains, which is a beast in and of themselves with the Drainage Act, and we have a process to follow there. So we were working with the township and their drainage superintendent, and we retained a third-party drainage engineer to review the reports, and they're sitting ready. At the time of writing this report, they were sitting ready. We have had a meeting since, and they've ascertained they do have enough information to start their site meetings, their on-site meetings, which is one of the formal processes of the Drainage Act. So the Drainage Act processes are beginning. We also identified that the original project scope, what was determined to be the project scope delivered from council, was from Highway 138 to the township boundary between North Stormont and North Glengarry. Last year, we did some geotechnical work in the project scope. We also extended a borehole in the short section between the boundary and Maxville village limits, and that's where we found the worst asphalt structure in the whole section, and so we determined at that time that the whole section would need to be reconstructed. We might as well add that section to the project scope. There was some minor delays to have that section surveyed. It was not part of the initial survey, and to bring that into the project as well. And and then we are working with the design consultant. We do feel that we should be further along, and there's been some, I would say, a little dissatisfaction in just the rate of obtaining deliverables. But we are going to have regular meetings moving forward just to make sure that they're providing to us what we need to turn around and provide to the drainage engineer, for example. We have received from them their sketches for what land would need to be acquired in order to widen the road. We have turned around and engaged a surveyor to provide us with the plans the R plan for each and every parcel that we would need to then approach the landowner. So we're hopeful that we'll be doing that process in tandem starting very soon as well. What we're observing is that we are coming through to about the middle of 2023 with being behind schedule. We've identified that the information that will be required to provide to the drainage engineer to complete the Drainage Act process will allow us to get started on culverts and underground work as we had been hoping to do. So that is something that we're going to be keeping a close eye on and attempting to put out later this year. And so we'll continue to update you with that progress and what we're intending to do in monthly updates. And any questions, I'd be happy to answer for you.
Thank you, Mr. Jans. Councillor Landry.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Warden. Thank you, Mr. Jans. So I may be putting you on the spot. So just so that both lower and upper tier are on the same page, like the construction process timeline. So what do you anticipate taking place? What do you think that the pulverizing or whatever we're going to do with the road, and then the actual paving? So what's the timeline that we can kind of be on the same page with our residents?
I would anticipate that any of the culverts, drainage works that we would look to do this year would be localized. So deeper excavations, replacing cross culverts. There's several municipal drain crossings that would require large pipe crossings. So those would be short-term road closures, as typical with any of our other large culvert replacements. There are also utilities that would have to be moved out of the way. So we are looking at widening not just the lane and the shoulder, but then also the embankment. On one or both sides of the road at various locations, there are utilities that will have to be pushed out of the way. I think that would be a good start this year. As far as pulverizing the asphalt, I don't think we would want to get into that and have a loose granular material into spring. Number one, there's not a whole lot of asphalt and granular to speak of before we get down to clay, so that would get very messy very fast in the spring if that's the state we left it at the end of this year.
Thank you, Councillor Landry. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Do you see this project going into 2025?
Do we have the 5th in Canada? I can't remember. Our focus is getting it done next year. That's the best I can tell you. If we don't get cooperation from utilities, if we have challenges acquiring land, these are all things that could affect the schedule. But, things line up the way we're anticipating scheduling, I think reasonably scheduling at this point in time. I would hope we have our number in terms of contract number set before budget even takes place, quite frankly, is what we hope. But we've got to get through we've got to jump over a bunch of hurdles before we're at that point.
Thank you. Just a question about the budget. I know this is going to be a very expensive project. And have we put some dollars aside for 2024?
Yes, we have. We've been, to council's credit, when we've presented our budget over the last several years already, we've been putting big chunks of money aside, and that's what we're pulling from to do the work we're doing right now and to pay for this initial stuff. So yeah, we've got a bank account going. I think we're still going to be challenged to be able to fund this project next year. I really do think that. But that being said, we've got some capacity and capability to be able to fund it. So we're hopeful that this will be a relatively painless to fund, but I think that we'll have to look at some different opportunities to be able to fund it.
Thank you. Anything further? Thank you very much. Now, the moment everyone's been waiting for, at least in the gallery at the back, Ms. Franklin.
Thank you, Warden Fraser, for that introduction, and members of council. And I thank you very much. I here? It's, okay. Thank you for indulging me in the presentation of this report, this good news report. The SDG Library is pleased to announce the relaunch of its most popular community reading event. I'm going to qualify that and say that maybe our summer reading program is equally as popular, but it's a totally different demographic. Let's just put it that way. Paused for the last 3 years, SDG Reads encourages all residents, certainly all adult residents, to read the same book from May to October. The selected book for this year's SDG Reads is about to be revealed. I would like to take a moment here to introduce to Council the coordinators for this year's system-wide program. Jessica Lomberg. Okay. Jessica is District Supervisor for South Dundas and South Stormont Library branches. And Lorna Platts. Lorna is the District Supervisor for North Glengarry, South Glengarry branches, as well as Avonmore branch. And on top of everything else they have to do in a supervisory role, they are taking on the madness of preparing for this big event. So SDG Reads celebrates books and writing and builds a sense of community through the shared experience of reading. The SDG Library provides a unique place and opportunity for everyone in the community to come together and talk about the same ideas as they are presented in a book or series. We have themed activities and events planned at all of our branch locations over the next 6 months as the staff-led SDG Reads Committee becomes more involved and inspired by the chosen book or series, and definitely author. Many copies of the 2023 SDG Reads selection have been acquired in various print and digital formats, so program participants will have ample opportunity to borrow the book or series or other books, possibly by the same author, from the library. Books will also be available for participants to purchase, and this will serve as a fundraiser for the program. And the author will be available to sign those purchased copies. So, the library will be welcoming an award-winning and widely recognized Canadian author to this year's SDG Reads program at our final event, to be held on October 23rd at North Stormont Place in Avonmore during Ontario Public Library Week. Now, in the past, this event has drawn more than 200 program participants just to the final event, which kind of gives you an idea of just how popular the program is. The special event will be complete with a VIP meet and greet with the author just before the event. And the author will be staying with us in our area for a couple of days, thereby giving us the opportunity to showcase several of SDG's local attractions and services. And now, with as much anticipation building and stringing you along as possible, please give Warden Fraser, who I actually volunteered to do this, and Margaret MacDonald, our library board chair, who I also volunteered, I just love the power, please give them your attention as they come together to unveil the 2023 SDG Reads Big Book. Now, in the past, we've done this with 2 big books because we didn't really know whether the people unveiling could get along, but I'm very confident that Warden Tony and Margaret will cooperate nicely and reveal what everyone in SDG will be reading between now and this October. Our author is Maureen Jennings. You may have heard that name with regard to the Murdoch Mysteries, very popular series, book series that have been turned in TV. But this is Maureen's latest, most recent series called the Paradise Cafe series.
Tony said it all, and I'm very honored to be here to reveal the SDG Reads selection, and I can't say more than what Tony said. The last event was amazing. If you missed it, you missed out, so don't miss out again. This will be just as amazing, so thank you.
Thank you, Margaret. Thank you.
Cool.
What shall we do with this?
Leave it right there.
And again, I just want to express thanks to everyone that organized this upcoming event, and congratulations to Ms. Franklin on this one. The last key information is the administrative update from Madam CAO.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. So a very brief update. I've put a little bit of my schedule during the month of April on, but more importantly, I thought I would just talk about our strategic planning session that we have coming up on Thursday, May the 25th. We're hoping that will kind of be 9 to 3:30ish. We're going to try and get everybody out, but we will have refreshments available for everybody at 8:30 to get in and settled. There will be several of our senior directors joining the session to work alongside with council. It will be facilitated by Suzanne Gibson. She was the same lady that did it during the last term of council. I think she also did work for North Glengarry. She's quite energetic. I think that it will be a very good day. So we're looking forward to having everyone there. And thank you to South Stormont. So we're going to be hosting it in the community center room at South Stormont. We will have refreshments and lunch brought in for everybody, so we're looking forward to, and we're going to provide some information to County Council, I would say at the end of this week. Want to try and get you a little bit of a package that will also include what the last strategic plan was. We've gotten together a little background information on the demographics, and I guess we would say population data and information that might be useful when you're looking at some of your priorities. So we're looking forward to that. We have the Warden's Breakfast coming up on June the 16th, so hopefully everybody has that marked on their calendar. The AMO conference is August the 20th to 23rd. The deadline for delegations is June the 9th. So perhaps as we work into our strategic priorities in that session, maybe council can give some thought if there's something that we should start to think about as a region to put forward for a delegation at AMO. I'm happy to work with members of council on that. We're going to have an employee recognition event at the August council meeting to recognize awards. We were thinking about doing it in June. However, we're going to have some roof work done in June, so we're a little bit concerned that if that project gets delayed, it might affect our event. And then we wanted to try and schedule it when we have some other important people that can join us that day. So we want to make sure that Karen Franklin is able to come back and join us on that day. Just on the human resources side, we've had a lot of students that have joined us in the last couple of weeks. Some of them are here this morning, so thank you for joining us. We have ongoing recruitments right now. We're wrapping up the recruitment process for our Director of Library Services, and we have a couple of other positions that we're recruiting for. Not sure if everybody was aware that Charlie has submitted his intentions to retire at the end of September, so we're going to be working through that process as well. I am working alongside with the Director of Transportation Services on preparing for our next negotiations for our QP 1715 collective agreement. So those are just a few items. Happy to take any questions from council if there happen to be any, but with that, I might hand it back to you, Mr. Warden.
Thank you, Madam. Yeah, questions, comments, thoughts on the busy schedule that the CAO has in front of her, or has had? Thank you. Motions, notice of motions, petitions, and now we get to miscellaneous business. Madam Clerk.
Yep, through you, Mr. Warden. Thank you. Director Young has put forward a draft resolution regarding the PPS. I could read it if you like. We did get it from Prince Edward County, had a thorough resolution, but we've tweaked it so that it suits our needs here in SDG. I'll go ahead and read it. It reads, whereas the goal of increasing housing supply and reducing barriers in planning processes as set out in the recent legislative, regulatory, and policy changes, including new provisions from Bill 23, More Homes Built Faster Act 2022 is welcomed. Whereas the proposed PPS, sections 2.6 and 4.3, would dramatically remove municipal power and renders aspects of the county's official plan and other official plans throughout Ontario inoperative, terminating some local planning autonomy and directly interfering with municipalities' ability to meet. Whereas the proposed PPS changes that would allow proliferation of lots with protection restricted to specialty crop areas only diminishes the purpose, uses, and integrity of rural and agricultural lands, thereby removing protection and restricting future uses of those lands. Whereas the proposed PPS changes encourage sprawl and rural roadway strip development rather than more fiscally and environmentally sustainable practices like intensification in established settlement areas. And whereas the province has announced changes will be proposed to natural heritage, section 4.1, that have yet to be published. Therefore, be it resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the United Counties of Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry urges the province to pause proposed changes to the PPS, particularly regarding natural heritage, section 4.1, and agricultural lands, sections 2.6 and 4.3, and reinvest trust in the local planning authority of all 444 municipalities, recognizing that each Ontario municipality has unique landscapes, different housing needs, and differing visions for local planning matters, and that our fellow municipalities be urged to voice their concerns regarding the proposed undermining of local planning authority, and further, that a copy of this resolution be sent to all 444 municipalities, the Honourable Doug Ford, Premier of Ontario, the Honourable Steve Clark, Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, the Honourable Lisa Thompson, Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs, the Honourable David Piccini, Minister of Environment, Conservation and Parks, Stormont, Dundas, South Glengarry MPP Nolan Quinn, Glengarry Prescott Russell MPP Stefan Sarazan, the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, the Rural Ontario Municipality Association, the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, and the Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Do we have a mover and a seconder? A mover, Councillor Williams, seconder, Councillor Lang. Questions, comments? All those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Young, for that effort. And the next item under miscellaneous business, the Social Development Council of Cornwall and area. Councillor Williams, you made the request that we review this.
Well, I'm just, I think since they are requesting a board member, we should probably discuss whether or not it's appropriate. I don't know what the protocol is in terms of adding more board representation. I don't know.
Through you, Mr. Warden, I believe CAO Adams, I think this is just an outside board that they're looking for representation from the committee. They're just seeking a nomination from County Council if this is something Council would be interested in participating in.
Thank you. Do you have anything further to add to that, Madam CAO?
Yes, through you, Mr. Warden. So it's not a committee of council, it's not a required appointment. I think it's politely a request to see if there's a member of council that might be interested and willing to sit on their board.
Madam CAO, would that, if there was a member from this council sitting on that board, would they be on the list of boards and committees that report back, or would that just be, how would that be managed?
So that certainly, through you, Mr. Warden, that certainly could be the process. I would recommend if there was a willing participant, then we have a resolution of council to appoint that member, and then it will fall through that protocol where we put on our agenda regularly for updates to come back to council.
So questions, comments, thoughts from members of council on the SDC request? Councillor Lang.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. I support it. I would like to nominate Karma.
Okay.
Okay, we have
I
a mover.
figured-
We have a mover and a seconder.
No,
Don't give her a chance to say
no,
anything.
honestly, I think it would be great if somebody else, I mean, I'm familiar with the work of the Social Development Council, and I would certainly support a member if they were interested in sitting on because they do represent the region as well. So, but I sit on an awful lot of boards already. So if somebody else wanted to put their name forward, I would certainly support that.
Well, thank you for that. To Councillor Williams' thoughts. Is anyone else interested in taking away the position from, potentially taking away the position from Councillor Williams? Seeing that, we have a mover and a seconder. And Councillor Williams, do you stand?
Don't really want to have brought it up and have it die on the table. That's not kind of appropriate. Are you sure, Mr. Densham? Somebody else?
Thank you very much.
Okay.
I'm not sure how we're going to process that, Madam Clerk, but...
Through you, Mr. Warden, I do have a draft motion. It's moved by Councillor Lang, seconded by Councillor McDonald, and reads that Councillor Williams be nominated as the United Counties of SDG Council Representative for the Social Development Council of Cornwall and Area Board of Directors.
Well, maybe more often than not. I'm not sure. Councillor Williams will bring us up to speed in that. So all those in favor? All those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, congratulations to Councillor Williams. And we, on behalf of the Council of the United Counties, I look forward to updates and more information to be provided to us about the benefits provided by this group. Thank you. Unfinished business, I believe there's none, Madam Clerk. The closed session is not taking place today, and the ratification bylaw.
It's moved by Councillor McDonald, seconded by Councillor Bergeron, that bylaw number 5401, being a bylaw to adopt, confirm, and ratify matters dealt with by resolution, be read and passed in open council, signed and sealed.
Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And before we get to the adjournment by resolution, I just want to remind council members to make their way to the CAO's office to have their council headshot pictures taken. do not leave the building until that's done. I appreciate that. I see we all look sharp, so today's the day. The adjournment by resolution.
It's moved by Councillor Broad, seconded by Councillor Densham, that council adjourn to the call of the chair.
All those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for your patience today as we work through this meeting, and I look forward to the next time we can be together.